I'm Tom Butler Stoney. My family moved to Burwood Hall in 1961. We came up from Hampshire. We brought about 30 Guernseys with us, and there were about 30 here already. We were buying the farm, so we knew we had to buy the germs, and we bought the cattle as well. And so we started off milking 60. We've been up to about 100 just before milk quotas, and we're now back to milking 73 today to milk. The soils of Norfolk are very variable. You have to think that the Ice Age glaciers came across the North Sea and pushed up the hills that used to be there. They ground them up in little bits and put them down in a great mix in Norfolk. Most of this farm is some of the heavy mix. It's yellow clay mixed with chalk, makes the subsoil, and that's broken down to make a arable topsoil. But you see it soon changes, and within a mile and a half of here there's commercial gravel workings with flints and sand mixed together. The heavy soil, together with a bit of damp off the North Sea, grows good grass in the summer. Traditionally my father liked the Timothy Meadow Fescue Leys, which did well on our heavy soils. And I was interested when a catalogue came round about 10 years ago pushing Timothy Meadow Fescue mixes, so that was how I first came to ring up Cotswold Seeds and speak to Ian Wilkinson, who seemed to have very similar enthusiasms. And so since that time, much of the grass sown on this land has been the Cotswold mixes of one sort and another. Sometimes long-lasting mixes for the heavy land, sometimes a short-term mix to go into an arable rotation. We have 700 acres in total. There were 300 acres when we first came, and we're now up to 700. This is what we call the back lane field next to the houses. It has been sown to the Cholderton mix with added chicory and has been doing very well. It's kept the cows well in this spring. You can see that the chicory is regrowing again now, and we have a nice thick crop of that. And the white clover is doing very well here. I'm still puzzled with the red clover. The whole farm seems to do better with white clover than red clover, but we'll see. This field has been keeping us very well this spring. This field would have been in winter barley for the harvest of 2011, and that was a tricky year for haymaking and things on this land. So it was the first year I tried stubble turnips, and we had a good crop of stubble turnips forage rape mix on here, and it went into Cholderton in the following spring, so March 2012 we went into the Cholderton mix, and so we'll leave that down for 4 or 5 years and then have another year or two as arable and then back into grass. I like to keep the grass here fairly frequently because it's within walking range of the milking parlour, so it spends more time in grass and less in arable. The further we get from the milking parlour, the more time we spend in arable and the less time in grass. This chicory and Cholderton mix has also got a problem with docks in it. My cereal agronomist wants to spray them off, but I won't let him because I want to keep the chicory and the clover going, so we've been topping every time between grazing cycles. We strip graze. We have an electric fence that we move on twice a day, and we try and keep a back fence about 5 days behind the milking cows, so that gets moved on a working day of the week when we've got time to move it up a bit. This is a field at the top of the farm. We have had the milking cows walk up here, but it's a little bit far for them really, so it's a field where we want to keep young cattle and also to make hay or silage up here. So for that reason I've gone for the milk and meat mix from Cotswold Seeds, but we've added chicory to it, and that will root down through any plough pan I've got and keep going in a drought, and I put it in just about every mix now because if it comes it does some good. This is a field at the top of the farm. It's a heavy soil up here, clay with flints in it and chalk in the subsoil. I subsoiled a little bit of it with the Caterpillar D4 and a subsoiler, and I pulled up some chalk into the surface layers of the soil now. So I think that is my answer to liming nowadays, is to go and subsoil and bring some chalk from the subsoil into the plough mix and bring it up to the top, and with the end of acid rain I think that is sufficient for me to keep the pH under control. I had it in grass a few years ago, previous cycle, with a Cotswold mix that included Ulsike clover, and the Ulsike did very well here. It was strong growing and productive, persisted in the sward and gave us a nice crop. It's now gone into a mix, a Timothy Meadow fescue mix, which has been very successful for us in the past. I've substituted some of the fescue for perennial ryegrass this year, and the mix as advertised has red clover, but I was pleased with the Alsike last year, so we've sown this with a half and half mixture, 50% red and 50% Alsike, and I'll be very interested to see what it looks like next summer when we cut it for hay or silage, as to which we've got most of in the actual sward when it comes up. This field was ploughed up in the spring from an overwintered stubble. We have overwintered stubble in the stewardship scheme. It was ploughed up from stubble and then power harrowed several times to get a good tilth on the top. We drill now using a serial drill. If I had a nice wet time coming, I'd still rather set it 2 inches above and broadcast the seed sideways, so as not to have it all coming up in rows, but to have it spread equally across the top. But here we drilled 1/4 inch deep and then rolled it in. And my experience is that the clover and grass seeds all come up very happily.